Hi all, this is Allmighty and welcome to this video. Today I bring you another game from Karpov. In this game he is playing against Oleg Dementiev, and we are still at the 1970 USSR Championship. I've already shown you a game, Korchnoi versus Karpov, where Karpov missed, so he didn't find that continuation in that end game, which would bring him at least a draw. So in the end he lost, but it was a very difficult end game, and yeah, sometimes you lose it in chess. But today, once again, we have an interesting game from Karpov. And this was a bit strange when I was going over this championship that he played. It was very strange to see Karpov in this state. And I will talk more about this during the game. But let's see just what happened. So Dementiev is white and he plays e4 first move. And Karpov, I have known him, known a lot of his games. And most of it, what I have seen is that he plays the Sicilian and the Karl-Khan, but in this game he plays knight f6, so he wants to try out his knowledge of the Alekhine's defense. So let's see what happened in the game. We see e5, knight to d5 and d4, so keeping it in the main line. d6, and now c4, knight to b6, pawn captures on d6 and pawn captures on d6, so the c pawn captures on d6. So this is everything fine, so this is the main line, where this knight ends up being on b6. Knight to c3 and g6. Once again, a normal thing for the Alekhines, developing this bishop on g7, going castles. Knight to f3, bishop to g7, and now h3 by Dementiev. So not allowing bishop to g4. Castles, and now I would expect white to play bishop to d3, maybe. I mean, bishop to e2 is a normal move, so the move from the main line, where you keep an eye with the queen and the knight on this d4 pawn, because knight to c6 will definitely be played. But now this allows bishop to f5 being developed, because the bishop stays on e2. First knight to c6, of course, castles, and now bishop to f5. So black has finished his development. Karpov is looking good here. And after b3 he plays d5. Yet another very standard move for the Alekhine's defense. If white captures, then after knight captures, essentially white is left with an isolated pawn in the center, and this is something that Karpov likes to play against. So usually people play c5 or even bishop to e3. But okay, c5 we see here from Karpov, and now you have two options, one of which is very much played, and that is knight to d7. So I have played the Alekhines a couple of times, not just a couple of times, but many times in my life, and I've been in these positions, and most of the players play knight to d7. But here Karpov plays knight to c8, which is also a move, because there aren't any other moves where you can move the knight, so these are pretty much the only two options. But it is considered to be a lesser of the two moves. It is very difficult to see where this knight is going to go, because if you play e6, then this bishop isn't looking too good. So definitely black needs to find the best way how to develop this. We see bishop to f4 played by Dementiev, and now b6. So this was Karpov's plan all along. He wants to play b6. If pawn captures, then knight can come back to b6 and everything is looking good. But Dementiev starts a rally of very good moves, and essentially puts Karpov in a very bad position. So he starts with bishop to b5, so attacking with a tempo, always a nice move. And when you think about it, how can you actually go about defending this? Knight to b8 doesn't look too good, and the only the reasonable move could be queen to d7, which Dementiev actually played. But now rook to c1. So soon to be open c file is there, and Dementiev notices it right away, playing the rook to c1 to wait for it to be open. We see a6, and now bishop captures on c6, queen captures, pawn captures on b6, and knight captures on b6. So keeping the queen on the c file where the rook is, which essentially allows knight to a4 with tempo. But actually in this position, Dementiev had a very good move to make, which he unfortunately missed for him. But it's a difficult move to spot and to make, to be honest. g4. The whole idea behind this move is that this bishop doesn't really have a good square to go to. Of course, you cannot move to e4 because knight then captures with the tempo. You should go to e6 or to d7. If, for example, you go to e6, knight to a4, whatever you play, queen has to move somewhere, and if she moves to b7, you have knight to c5 attacking the two pieces at the same time. If queen to c8, also knight to g5 is an idea. And if bishop to d7 comes, knight to a4, queen goes back to b7, and after rook to c7, the position is falling apart for black here. So this is one of the possibilities. If, for example, you go to d7, then knight to a4, and once again it would be the same idea if you go queen to c7, rook to c7, so knight to c4, for example, but first knight to c5, and here what do? You move the knight out of harm's way, knight to d6, but now a simple rook to e1 attacks the pawn here, and yeah, it is very difficult to find a move for black. This knight will jump off somewhere, and in the end black will be the one in the worst position. So this is pretty much what could have happened if g4 was played, but Dementiev went for knight to a4 immediately. Queen goes back to b7, and now knight to c5. Queen to a7, moving out of harm's way, and rook to e1. So Dementiev plays a very, very good chess. So he was one of the strongest since he is participating in this tournament, one of the strongest in the USSR at that point. He plays a very principled move, rook to e1, put the rook on the semi-open file, keep making threats, and keep pushing black into the corner. And now once again Karpov makes a move that really puzzles me. So I was expecting the development or something from at least one of the rooks, like rook to e8, or maybe one of the rooks to c8 on the open file. But here he plays bishop to c8. I'm not sure completely what was the purpose of this move, maybe to b7, but I don't see what is essentially doing, what is this bishop doing here. So we see queen to d2. White is enjoying his extra space in comparison to black, and just trying to push and push until he gets a winning advantage. Now rook to e8, and now knight to e5. Having these two very strong knights, it's a very good position for white. One thing though, if black in this position plays something stupid like something meaningless like h6, knight to c6 comes and the queen is trapped. So even that is a threat, because the position of black is very cramped, and now these pieces work very well together, keeping this queen in check, and the knight will pick it up. So this was a threat, and you have to deal with it. Bishop to b7 was played by Karpov, and this was met by a4. Yeah, it's an okay move. It's a move going forward. But one thing is certain, probably also bishop to e5 was now possible by Karpov, but he first plays rook to d8. I cannot say that he has finished his development, but essentially all of the pieces are developed, but they aren't looking too good. After queen to b4, finally he played bishop captures on e5. No, bishop captures on e5, and still he needs to resolve some issues with his position. And he starts with bishop back to c8. And now, as it seems, white has a very good situation here, but Dementiev starts with a knight to d3, probably moving the knight out of the way so that he can play rook to c7. But Karpov plays knight to a8, stopping that. So Dementiev goes back, knight to c5 and knight to b6. And one thing that I probably mentioned in the previous video is that Karpov during this championship was heavily criticized by his peers. In a sense, he played 21 games in this tournament, and of those 21 games he had 14 draws. He was one of the players who had the most draws in the tournament, but essentially it wasn't just that he was drawing because all the players are playing on the same level as he, but he is going for these variations and options which kind of led to a draw very easily. He even drew one game in 7 moves, which isn't really like expected from a player who was expected to be one of the top, one of the elite, and potentially a world champion one day. But okay, I can understand it in this position where he needs to repeat the moves because essentially he is in a worse position. But here Dementiev, as he was a good player, realized that now it's the time to strike, because essentially he is in a much better position, so he wants to take advantage of it, and he plays knight to a6. So he temporarily sacrifices the piece because bishop captures on a6, and now rook to c7, an immediate threat. If you want to keep an eye on this knight, so defend it, this is the only move, but now rook to e7 comes with a discovered attack on the queen. If rook captures, you even have time to capture the rook with the queen, and now you have to give up the queen because queen to f6 is just too big of a threat. So that was one thing. So Karpov, probably because that didn't go for this, he played queen to a8. So Dementiev just picked up the piece. So now he has one pawn. And he has two passed pawns on the queen side, which is in and of itself a very big threat. A very big advantage, of course. So Karpov continued. He played rook to b8, attacking the queen, and queen to c5. Now double attack on the e7 pawn. And Karpov, at this point, also, I guess he wanted to go for some counterplay because he is essentially in a losing position, and he wanted to get rid of one of the passing pawns. So he captured on b3. But this leads to a terrible result because rook captures on e7, and now rook didn't capture on e7, but he played bishop to d3. And actually, we come to the point in game where now Dementiev makes the move, which essentially seals the deal, breaks the position, I would say. This is one of the reasons why I also wanted to show you this game. So if you want, you can pause the video and try to find it yourself. Keep in mind that this is the move, like, when I saw this move, I was like, wow, yeah. It isn't the move that you see right away, but essentially, what I wanted to say, it kind of breaks the position in half, and white is definitely the winner after this. You cannot recover from this move. So in this position, actually, Dementiev played queen to d5, so sacrificing the queen. And can you call it a sacrifice? Probably. I mean, you can call it, because if queen captures on d5, it is a full queen, but it is met with rook to e8, which is checkmate in one. So this isn't something that you can do. But what can you do instead of that? Essentially nothing, because your rook is attacked and the queen is threatening to capture on f7. So with check and checkmate. With checkmate, if rook doesn't do anything about it. So this is pretty much it. The only move is rook to f8, queen captures on b3, and you're up a whole rook. So yeah, this is pretty much it for this game. I hope you really enjoyed this final move by Dementiev. Karpov is still young and unexperienced from at this point, so 19 years of age in 1970. Still needs to work on his chess and his play. But I guess he won't be playing the Alekhines defense anytime soon. Of course, he could have played knight to d7 like most of the players do in that position after c5, but he decided to go for this very strange knight to c8 b6 idea. So yeah, I also wanted to show you this game because it reminded me of my last game. Not last game, but one of my last games that I played, where essentially I made a very bad decision in the opening, and then after that my opponent just went on little by little, just playing principled moves, crushing me little by little. And that's it. Sometimes you have that awful feeling in chess. Probably Karpov had it after this, and maybe he just because of this game stopped playing the Alekhines altogether. But okay, enough being said. So this is pretty much it for this video. I would like to thank you for watching it, and I will see you next time.